She didn't hold you when you cried. Or maybe she held you too tight and never let you learn how to stand on your own. Maybe she was the warmest presence in every room she entered. Or maybe she was the silence that made every room feel cold. Maybe she pushed you toward things you didn't want. Maybe she disappeared when you needed her most. But here is the thing that nobody talks about. No matter what kind of mother she was, the one who healed you or the one who hurt, you think about her differently than you think about anyone else on this earth. There is a weight to that relationship that has no comparison. A pull that doesn't loosen no matter how many years pass, no matter how much distance you put between you, no matter how much work you do on yourself. You felt that, haven't you? That specific, unshakable weight. Here is what I want you to hold for the next 15 minutes. A single question, not a comfortable one. What if the mother you were born to with all her love and all her damage was not an accident? What if, before you arrived in this body, some part of you looked at her soul and said, yes, her. That is the one I need. And what if understanding why you chose her is the exact thing that will finally set you free from the parts of her you have been carrying your whole life? Stay with me. Because what we are going to uncover right now changed the way I understand every difficult relationship I have ever been in. And I think it will change the way you see yours. There is a word that gets used carelessly, soul contract. People say it like it is a romantic idea. Like two souls sitting somewhere in soft light, choosing each other gently, warmly, with full knowledge of what lies ahead. The reality, if the ancient teachers are to be believed, is far less comfortable than that. A soul contract is not a preference. It is not a wish. It is an agreement made at the level of your deepest self before the body, before the name, before any of the circumstances of this life were in place. And the terms of that agreement are not written in kindness. They are written in necessity. What your soul needs, not what it wants. There is a difference. And that difference is everything. Paramahansa Yogananda wrote something in his autobiography that most people read once and then quietly put down because it is too much to sit with. He described the soul entering a new life not as a fresh beginning, but as a continuation. A student returning to a classroom where certain lessons remain unfinished. The body is new. The name is new. But the curriculum, the specific emotional and spiritual work that needs to be done, that carries forward. And the teachers in that classroom are not random. They are assigned. Now think about what that means for the woman who raised you. If this framework holds and across thousands of years and dozens of traditions, versions of this framework keep appearing independently of each other, then your mother was not a biological accident. She was a specific selection. Her exact combination of strengths and wounds, her particular way of loving, her particular way of failing, was precisely what your soul required to learn what it came here to learn. Too specific to be purely random. Too perfectly calibrated to your weakest places to be the work of blind chance. Which brings us to a woman named Priya. She grew up in Jaipur, second of 3 daughters. Her mother was not cruel, that is the thing that made it so confusing. Her mother was simply elsewhere, present in the room but absent in the way that mattered. When Priya achieved something, her mother nodded and moved on. When Priya was frightened, her mother said things would be fine and changed the subject. There was food on the table and clothes on her back and school fees paid on time, and a specific hollowness that Priya carried quietly into her adult life, not knowing what to call it because nothing bad had ever technically happened. She became excellent at her work. A project manager in a Bangalore tech firm known for her reliability and her precision. She was the person everyone called when things needed fixing, and completely alone in a way that her colleagues, who liked her very much, never quite saw. She had tried therapy twice. Both times she had sat across from a kind professional and explained her childhood and been told, gently, that her mother had likely done her best. That was true. It was also completely unsatisfying, because it explained the situation but not the weight, not the specific, persistent, bone-deep feeling of being on the outside of something, looking in, that no amount of professional success or friendly colleagues ever touched. At 36, Priya's mother was diagnosed with a condition that would, over several years, slowly take her memory, and Priya flew home. Not out of obligation, though she told herself that is what it was. Out of something older and more complicated that she did not have a name for. What happened in that house over the following months is not dramatic in the way stories are supposed to be dramatic. There were no tearful reconciliations, no sudden confessions, no moment where her mother looked at her with clear eyes and finally said all the things she had never said. What happened was quieter than that, and more devastating, and more healing, eventually, than anything a controlled environment could have produced. Because as her mother's memory began to loosen, as the careful distances her mother had always maintained began to dissolve along with the names and dates and social protocols, something underneath emerged. Her mother, without the usual filters, reached for Priya's hand constantly, called her name in the night, laughed at things the way a child laughs, completely and without self-consciousness, needed her. And Priya, sitting in the small bedroom of her childhood home at 2 a.m. holding her mother's hand, felt something she had spent 36 years waiting to feel. Not the words, not the explanation, not the apology, just needed, just enough. She told me later that she did not understand it for a long time. She had gotten what she needed from a version of her mother who no longer remembered her name half the time. That made no logical sense. Unless the need was never really about her mother at all. Unless the need was something older, something her soul had carried in, and her mother had been the exact instrument required to press on it long enough, and hard enough that when the pressure finally released, the groove itself had changed. The lesson was not about her mother. The lesson was about what Priya believed she needed to do to deserve love. And she had finally, in that small room, in the dark, learned it. Not because her mother became the mother she had always wanted, but because, in her mother's dissolution, Priya found the mother inside herself that she had been waiting for someone else to be. That is what a karmic contract looks like when it completes. Not a clean ending, not a bow on top. A quiet, unexpected, internally verified shift where something that has been pulling tight for years, or lifetimes, finally loosens. Think of it this way. Imagine a river that has been running the same course for so long that it has cut a canyon into the rock below it. The water does not choose the canyon, it simply flows where the rock allows it to flow. Generation after generation, the water runs the same channel, deepening it, making it harder and harder for the water to go anywhere else. That is what a karmic groove looks like inside a soul. And the mother your soul chose, she was not the one who created the canyon. She was the one who made the canyon visible. Who ran so much pressure through that specific channel that the canyon could no longer be ignored. Because you cannot heal what you cannot see. You cannot fill what you do not know is empty. Your mother and all her particular flawed, specific humanness made the invisible visible. That is what karmic teachers do. Not by being perfect, by being precisely, unavoidably themselves. The river is still running. But Priya is no longer the canyon. She is learning, slowly, to be the water. Now here is what I want to leave with you. Not a concept to hold intellectually. Something to actually do. Tonight, before you sleep, sit somewhere quiet. Not to meditate, just to think. And bring your mother to mind. Not the story you have told about her. Not the version of her that lives in your grievances or your gratitude. Just her. L'actuelle person. With her own fears she never named, and her own wounds she never showed you, and her own soul contract she came into this life to work through. And ask yourself not as a performance, but genuinely, what did I learn from this specific woman that I could not have learned from anyone else? Not what did I receive. What did I learn? There is a difference. Because if the framework holds, if she was chosen and not accidental, then somewhere, inside the specific texture of that relationship, is the exact lesson your soul signed up for. And the degree to which you resist that lesson is the degree to which the contract remains open. Completion is not forgiveness in the conventional sense. It is not pretending the wound was not real. It is something more precise than that. It is understanding genuinely in your body, not just your mind, what the wound was trying to show you about yourself, and choosing consciously to see it. When Priya held her mother's hand in the dark, she was not forgiving her mother. She was completing something. Something that had been pending in her words, not mine for longer than this lifetime. The bond between a mother and child is not the heaviest bond a soul carries because it is the most loving. It is the heaviest because it is the most necessary, because it comes first, because it shapes everything that comes after. Because it is, in the oldest understanding of how souls travel and what they come here to do, the first classroom, the first mirror, the first contract. And the moment you stop asking why she was the way she was and start asking what you were meant to become because of it, that contract begins, finally, to close. You were not born to her by accident, and you have not been carrying this for nothing. The weight has a purpose, and the purpose, now that you can see it, is almost within reach. There is one more thing, one thread I want to leave slightly open, because it connects directly to what comes next. Your mother was not the only soul in your life who was assigned rather than accidental. The person who hurt you most, the one whose name just came to mind, the one you did not expect to think about right now, they were not random either. Why the people who damage us the most are often the ones our soul chose most deliberately. Why your hardest relationship may be your oldest contract. That is where we go next. And if what we explored today opened something in you, if some door that has been closed for a long time moved even slightly on its hinges, then you already know you cannot afford to miss it.